Hello, everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Thursday, January 16th, 2025. I'm your host, George Kurt, joined by the one and only Cody Roadcap. Cody, I know it's going to be a good episode when you don't mess up the intro.
It was close. If you are watching on YouTube, if not, make sure you go over and subscribe. But if you're watching on YouTube, you probably saw the panic in my eyes when a pop-up flashed right out. I don't know why. A
Every
pop-up flashed.
time.
Another app was trying to access my settings. I'm like, I don't care right now. I'm doing something. And I almost missed getting the background, but it switched right as the football faded away. Little inside football, baseball, podcasting, however you want to describe it.
Yeah. The behind the scenes of the tech portion of creating a podcast. And I mean, Cody and I have done even more in-depth productions in this in our past. So this seems like nothing until a pop-up comes on the screen, and it's amazing how computers just mess everything up.
For sure.
But make sure you guys are following us for all of the football content at the Couch GMs, Facebook, X, Instagram, and at least for now, TikTok. Make sure you can hit us in the DMs with any fantasy questions or football questions you have every week, and watch us live and comment Mondays and Thursdays, 6:30 East. All right, Cody, why don't we jump right in? Let's sit back, relax, and chat.
Oh, that's my cue. You see, I was already thinking ahead. Not.
What were you thinking ahead on? Are you trying to figure out what we're going to talk about when we relax and chat here?
Yeah, I guess. Or maybe because you bragged on me for getting the intro right. I was like, oh, hands clean, job's done. Nope, I still had another button to press.
Yes, you did. And you're still going to have to do the outro when we get to that. But we got plenty of time until we get there for you to regroup. In the meantime, we saw one of the more interesting things I've ever seen happen in the NFL, where Deontay Johnson was dropped by the Houston Texans. And we thought there was a chance he would go to his fourth team of the season. Turns out he did not go to his fourth team of the season. He went back to his second team as the Ravens claimed him off of waivers. But he isn't eligible for the playoffs. So essentially what the Ravens did was claimed him off of waivers to not have him enter the building, and then they have a chance to get a comp pick depending on what kind of contract he signs in the offseason.
Yeah. Isn't it his third team, though?
It's his third team. It just wasn't going to be his fourth. He went back to his second team.
But wouldn't it be his third team? Like, are we bad at math here?
Do the Steelers count?
It was Steelers to the Panthers, and then Panthers to the Ravens.
So he was on 4 going for 5. Yeah, I guess you're right. I didn't know if the Steelers counted, but yes, if the Steelers count, it's back to his third team.
Okay. Doesn't matter. But yeah, it's a funny situation, and you just don't see it happen because not often are playoff teams cutting players that are picked up on waivers. I mean, the only comparable situation is the occasional you'll see a player, and you saw this more during like the COVID years when they had extra replacements and stuff like that. There was once or twice a player was on a practice squad, got called up for a game, went back to the practice squad, then got poached the following week. I know there was an offensive lineman for the Colts that he lost in the wild card round for the Colts, but was able to get claimed by the Packers and play for them in the divisional round. So crazy stuff. But like you mentioned, the key thing to note here is Deontay Johnson isn't going to be a Raven. His contract is up. He is not eligible to play in the playoffs. So this doesn't have anything to do with Zay Flowers' potential injury, potential return. This is just like, hey, we dealt with this guy, and we're going to add him to the comp pick formula, which is one of the few things in the NFL that is not like general public knowledge of how it works. And it's not likely that they would get a comp pick for him, but there is some compelling or compiling of like if they lose 3 players, that could all go towards one comp pick. So unless someone sees this guy and is like, you know what, I still really want him on my team.
Yeah, it has something to do with how big of a contract they sign as well, which, I mean, after his up and down season, there's a chance he signs a decent contract. There's a chance he has to take one of those 1-year prove it deals, which I think is probably the more likely scenario and not going to vote super well for the Ravens in their hunt for a comp pick. But like you said, combined with other losses could lead to something.
Well, and two, so like the comp pick formula for anyone that's super nerdy and people, this is normally off-season talk, but whatever. It is unrestricted, not people that were cut. People that were cut don't fall into this formula, but it's basically the amount you lose subtract the amount you gain. And again, it's not if you sign someone that was cut, it's if you sign someone in unrestricted free agency. So where it could play into a factor is if maybe they don't sign any big names, but they lose two and sign one smaller name, they could end up with a 7th-round comp pick just by making this move. And I'm not a cap enough expert to know like if there's even any salary cap ramifications because he's not eligible to be on the playoff roster. So I wouldn't imagine he's getting playoff money. So since the season's quote unquote over, is he even due any more? I guess it would depend on but his contract's up. So yeah, I don't even think there's like cap implications for this.
No, and even if there were cap implications, I'm assuming the Ravens would be far enough under that it wouldn't affect them because like they're not going to go out there and resign like sign anybody new by the end of the season. They could honestly drop cap if someone ends up having to hit IR. Like it does, like even if it
I didn't.
did hit against their cap, I don't think it would have been enough with the fact that there's not really going to be that many moves.
No, I meant it more as in like it seems like it's a free pickup, and I'm surprised only the Ravens did it.
It makes you wonder if non-playoff teams could have done this.
I don't think non-playoff teams could have. I think their rosters are locked. That's why you're seeing teams sign everyone to future deals. Like all your practice squad guys are now getting signed to future deals. I don't think they could have signed him because in all like their season is over. But the 8 remaining teams, so the 7 other ones could have, I guess 6, because the Texans weren't going to claim him on waivers after waiving him. But just an interesting situation, all in all.
Well,
It's
one
almost like
other
a free
question
kick.
for you while we're on this one. If he would have cleared waivers, could he have signed to a team and played?
I do not believe so.
Okay, because then the other question would have been, were the Ravens doing this as a defensive move?
I believe that after it might even be when the playoffs start, but I believe after I think it's like the Tuesday before wild card weekend, you can't make or maybe external additions or something like that. Like that, you can see people come back from IR. Like if the Lions make it to the Super Bowl, there's a chance they'll get Aiden Hutchinson back. Like they can make those
Yeah.
moves, and unfortunately, somebody will probably have to be cut for him to get back. But I don't think that they would. They're able to sign ex free agents because of the whole situation.
Yeah, and that would make sense to me. And you can obviously still make your practice squad moves and call ups as well. But yeah, interesting to see how the Aiden Hutchinson thing will work. And I'm sure we'll talk about that as we go on. The Eagles also have a situation where Brandon Graham might come back for a Super Bowl. Like there's a couple of guys out there. The Lions might have a couple even on their defense that could be looming if, they make it further into the playoffs with how banged up they were.
Yeah, hopefully they don't make it.
That's something we can agree on, Cody. Now I have one thing on here under coaching updates, but feel free to throw in any others. But I just want to talk about the buzz of the media right now being the Cowboys and Deion Sanders, where Jerry Jones says he is very intrigued at the idea of Deion Sanders becoming the next Cowboys head coach. Haven't heard too much from Deion, but apparently he's talked to him. There's been some discussions at least. No formal interview. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, basically, Dion was like, "Yeah, we talked. If Jerry calls, I'm going to answer the phone. I love Boulder, Colorado." So, he didn't deny it. I know that the buzz is increasing that he would be interested in it for sure. I just don't know if I see it coming full circle this year. Maybe it does. Maybe Dion jumps on board, and it wouldn't be like the most shocking thing. Um, you know, some people would say this is like right up there with Mike Vrabel going back to New England. And I think that's
Mhm.
part of the reason why so many people are into this because we just saw Mike Vrabel, team franchise favorite, get a job, high profile name, go back to his team. I know Dion played for multiple teams, but he's known mostly as a Cowboy or an Atlanta Falcon. But we'll call him a Cowboy, and he'll be able to go there if he so chooses. But I think that conversation supposedly came out Sunday, and now the Cowboys are putting in requests. They're going to want to interview Kellen Moore. I know that was one name. I think they're also going to interview Robert Saleh, and the names are starting to.
Leslie Frazier, I think, was the other one.
Yeah, Leslie Frazier is going to get a shot there. So those are just some names to keep an eye on. I still tend to think it's Kellen Moore's job to lose.
Yeah.
But if he was going to lose to somebody, Dion would be the guy.
I think so too. I think Belichick still would have been in that conversation if he had not gone to UNC first. But so the Kellen Moore thing is interesting because maybe it's just I'm hearing this a lot, with Philly media, but offensive coordinator coaching in a game this weekend who has 3 head coaching interviews over the next 2 days. And there's been a lot of people complaining about how they handle head coaching interviews, and you can't really deny people for talking to teams just because they're employed and their team's in the playoffs. But there almost seems to be a point where when is it becoming a distraction for a coach or coordinator doing head coaching interviews while still trying to make a playoff run? And it's actually interesting too, because current Cardinals head coach, I can't remember his name now. I'm blanking
Jonathan
in the
Gannon.
middle. Yes, Jonathan Gannon. He was a defensive coordinator in Philly back in 2022, and he admitted he was distracted during Super Bowl prep week because he was doing head coaching interviews. I'm wondering if, hearing all this, you're going to start seeing some sort of a change or a tightening in the rules when it comes to interviewing coordinators that are still in playoff contention.
So I know he's interviewing on Friday with the Cowboys.
He also has an interview with the Saints and the Jaguars over the next 2 days.
Which is definitely a lot to
Yeah.
take in. For some reason, I was thinking that you couldn't interview people that were still in. That's why the extra week was so crucial for guys like Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, because they got the bye week. But I guess that I need to freshen up on the coaching interview rules. But here's the thing: distraction, maybe, but let's understand these people are people too. And I know this is the biggest game, the biggest moments, and we've all worked extra hours in our own personal jobs. But every time you go get a job, you're working your job and talking to someone else behind their back, or you're interviewing and applying and searching on LinkedIn. Obviously, these guys aren't doing that in your free time at home. Now, we put these coaches in this like pedestal, oh, they're going to sleep in the stadium. They go home. I'm not saying they work 9 to 5s. They go home. They spend time with their families. I think it's totally fine if they can, work it in. And I think these coaches also know too, to get to where you want to be, which is ultimately a head coach. Yeah, you want to win with the Eagles. You want to win the Super Bowl, but you can't be the guy that starts turning down interviews. There's only 32 NFL head coaches, 32 in the whole world, and a lot of qualified candidates. So distraction, maybe it's Friday. That's already the light day. Walkthroughs, he can handle it in the afternoon and still be ready to go for game time.
And I agree with that, but I've just heard so many people talking about it. And I mean, it hasn't been a distraction for Lions coaches that we know of over the past few years. I know that they've done some interviewing. Ben Johnson's decided to stay back in Detroit after these last few seasons, but he's been in the coaching cycle for this is a 3rd or 4th season. And we see this every single year. So I'm interested to see if anything changes since it's kind of coming more into the spotlight. But from what I understand, if the person is still in playoff contention and not on a bye week, you can't interview them in person, but you can interview them virtually.
Yeah, you definitely can't interview them in person. So that's another part about it. These are virtual interviews. Like, we don't know how, because I also think that's the other thing. We hear about these 6-hour in-person interviews, and so you hear Kellen Moore's going to interview for 3 people. I mean, I'm sure they're longer than 30 minutes, but how long are your phone interviews? How long are when you're doing? And I don't like to compare this because anyone's jobs that's listening is drastically different than NFL head coach. But virtual is the initial, the phone. They're going to talk. Hey, what are you thinking? Like, do we want to bring you in? Like, he could knock out all 3 of these in 3 hours on a Friday evening in the same time that the players that, don't need distraction are watching the newest movie that came out. Like, at the end of the day, I don't think it's, that big of a deal.
I agree with you there, but glad we had a little discussion there. I don't think there's anything else I had on here. I saw there was new Guardian caps coming out.
Yeah, we did see that. But to your point, just if we wanted to make it all simpler,
Mhm.
and the NFL is media king.
Yep.
If you wanted to fill February to free agency, no coaches can be hired until after the season's over. Same thing with, here's our 30 seconds of college football. Stop having early admission to the transfer portal. Put that after the college football season.
Yes.
I mean, you already saw it this week was the day for college players to have to declare for the NFL draft, but they made an exception for next week for the two teams that are still playing in the college football playoffs.
What's the point?
Just put everybody after the season. Just put all the transfer portal after the season. Just put the head coaches after the season. I mean, I get they do it because it helps fill the news cycle now, but fill in after the Super Bowl to the start of free agency.
Yeah, you would think if you're trying to fill the news cycle, you're going to be able to fill it with your games still occurring, all those storylines, not needing to fill in this head coaching interview. If you're doing that February 20th, this guy is a new head coach. Like that's the NFL dead zone. That makes sense to me to push that back. But I know there's going to be teams that are making coaching changes that are going to argue it puts them so far behind the eight ball because you're going to have less time in the building between signing a head coach and then going into free agency and the draft.
Yeah. I mean, and there's also like GMs being interviewed, and then there's teams like the Jets that are interviewing 30 head coach candidates. I don't have their GM in place. The Bears are up there. They've interviewed everybody that I can think of. So unless you want to play a game of who ends up coaching this team, I think we're good to talk divisional round.
Just the last thing I heard that I forgot to put on here. Rodgers said on Pat McAfee today that his future with the Jets is reliant on who they sign as their GM and head coach. So it sounds like he's still interested in coming back and playing. Doesn't know if it's going to be with New York.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, that could play a factor into if he does come back. If we does he want to go?
Does he want to go somewhere new and have to reset again, or does he just want to retire? Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah,
that makes sense.
The interesting one I've seen is I know Arthur Smith's getting some head coaching opportunities, which is kind of wild, especially after the Steelers season. But it doesn't always have to be great. But Mike McCarthy, Pittsburgh guy, becomes the offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh. Aaron Rodgers to Pittsburgh with Mike Tomlin, Mike McCarthy, some veteran coaches, guys they know, especially like a guy like Mike McCarthy. They could use a stopgap quarterback if they don't want to bring Russell Wilson back into the mix. So that could be like a sneaky, interesting team that maybe not a lot of people have thought of.
Man, that would be glorious to see Pittsburgh lose a quarterback and an offensive coordinator and a head coach in the same season after next year.
I mean, it would also be funny if they ended up, Rodgers going to the only team that he beat in the Super Bowl. I think that'd be a fun story as well.
It would. And pairing him with McCarthy seems to make sense, especially in the twilight of his NFL career.
But yeah, McCarthy's going to be the Bears coach. So
yeah, right. And Bobby Sloak's probably going to the Jets. Congrats.
There's no way he gets the job. No way.
Apparently he's a front runner. We'll see. Plenty more coach talk.
Dude, there's been like 7 different front runners for the Jets job. Yesterday it was Aaron Glenn. So
cool.
They just requested to interview Bobby Sloak today, and now he's the front runner. The Jets don't know anything.
No, they really don't. Who's had a higher Madden rating? That's what we figured out.
Yeah, they found out, oh, Bobby Sloak used to work with Kyle Shanahan. I like him.
Sounds like the Jets to me.
For sure.
Let's talk divisional round. Teams that are more competent franchises that are still in playoff contention. Starting off 4:30 on Saturday with the Texans at the Kansas City Chiefs. Over under for this game, 41.5. Chiefs favorites by a whole 8 points.
Yeah,
I guess that's that's accurate. I don't know really if I have much to say with I have not much faith in the Texans to pull this one off.
I didn't love their chances against the Chargers, and I don't love their chances now, especially because they have two key injuries that are both questionable.
Mhm.
My gut says they're going to play, but linebacker Aji Shire and Joe Mixon are both questionable, and those are arguably their best player on defense and arguably their best player on offense. If not, they're definitely top three on their respective sides of the ball. So that would be big. The biggest question that I think we're going to debate till we're blue in the face, if it even matters, is how rusty are the Kansas City Chiefs?
Yes.
And really, their offense can be rusty because it hasn't been good all season. They just need their defense to come out and play. And typically, the defense is better off of a break than the offense. So I think they'll be
Yes.
okay. Uh, and, everyone would love to see the Texans upset them, but I got the Chiefs in this one.
I agree. I've also got the Chiefs in this one. I think my biggest question is this is going to be kind of ridiculous. Mahomes got playoff ankle out of the way early this year, and now he's been sitting for going on a month. Is it still playoff ankle if he's healthy?
Yeah, probably. Or he'll roll it again.
He's got to roll it again just to get that boost, I guess. I don't know. But no, for real. I do think there's going to be a couple of bumps in the road for the Chiefs, but I don't think they could have asked for much better of a matchup either. This Texans defense is very boom or bust. They do get some turnovers, have some decent games, but at the same time, they've given up a lot of points. They've been very mediocre at times. And this Texans offense, especially since they've been down the two receivers, has just been very wishy-washy. You're going to get a decent game out of Nico Collins. Mixon being banged up, Mixon was basically their ticket to trying to get through this game. They would have to control the ball and just kind of surprise the Chiefs a little bit. And then also make it easier on Stroud to throw by making them have to stack the box for Mixon. So seeing that Mixon's banged up is not a good sign.
Yeah, and if you're curious, 27-19. So exactly 8 points was the difference in their matchup just a few weeks ago.
I
So
wonder where the books got that number.
yeah, I think the Chiefs are on this one. I'm going to ask you an interesting question at the end, so don't let me forget, but we can move on if you'd like.
At the end of the show. Wow, we're really teasing this one. Next game, 8 o'clock on Saturday. We got Commanders at Lions. This is the big boy points game. I guess the Commanders had one of these last week and they didn't hit the over, but over under 55.5 and Washington 9.5 point underdogs. That line also seems pretty fitting, but I mean, the Lions defense, while it's starting to get healthier, is still very banged up. The Commanders still did put up a decent offensive showing last week, and they have a pretty good offense, and the Lions offense just seems unbeatable at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is very similar to the Texans Chiefs game. I think the Lions are the clear cut favorites in this one. They should go out and win. I think the most exciting thing about this game is I don't think there'll be a single punt. I think they're going for it every fourth down. Heck, teams might just onside kick for fun in this one between the two Dans.
If
Uh,
only they were allowed to.
in the fourth quarter. You're right. Thank you for clarifying the
Yeah.
rule that needs to change this offseason. But
Mhm.
Commanders, Lions. I do think the Commanders have been playing well as of late. They're kind of like the team that's getting hot. I mean, it wasn't a dominating performance against the Buccaneers that took a Baker Mayfield fumble after being stopped on fourth down for them to get back and take the lead in that one. But the way the Commanders are playing, Jaden Daniels seems like he can have a big game at any moment and could potentially, pull off an upset if there were to be one, although I don't think there is going to be one.
This Washington team has been on the right side of luck pretty much the entire season so far. So I'm interested to see if we get into a situation where it comes down to a final drive or it's very close. If we start thinking like, is this that destiny season for the Commanders? Are we gonna see something happen again? I don't see it happening that way. I think if it's going to finish close, it's more than likely going to be a Lions up 2 scores, Washington scores to get within a score, and then, it, just ends from there. But 9.5 points, I also kind of want to take Washington, just knowing that I think they can put up points in this game and keep it at least kind of close. But 9.5 points is still a 2-score game. So
Yeah, the points is definitely interesting in this one, but I think the Lions got the win for the money line.
agreed. I still think the Lions have the win on that, but I wouldn't bet the money line, being as you're not going to get a lot of value. I don't know if we talked injuries too much. Terry and Arnold, corner for the Lions, will be back. They are missing a guard, Kevin Zeitler. The interesting one, David Montgomery, who was supposed to be out for the season and got like 4 different opinions from doctors and decided to rehab, has been a full participant in practice, and he's going to be back. So I'm interested to see how much they use him. If he's going to just kind of be in for a couple of plays, if he's going to re-enter his 50-50 split with Jahmyr Gibbs, or if it's going to end up being he's almost an emergency third running back and we still see Craig Reynolds.
No, I think he's back. I
Back
think
to a
they'll
full
still
50-50.
I don't know if it's a full 50-50 just because of how well Gibbs has been playing as of late, but I don't think you're seeing Craig Reynolds or the other dude they've been running through there. I think it'll be those two.
And then trying to stop there on the other side, the Commanders, it seems like everyone on their injury report is going to go. Big news is Bobby Wagner hasn't participated in practice yet with his ankle injury, but he should be fine to go as well. So that's their best shot at trying to stop the run, plugging up the middle with Bobby Wagner. You mentioned it last week. A lot of guys with some solid playoff experience on that roster. Just they haven't played together until this season.
Yeah, like I said, I wouldn't. If I'm the Lions, you can't sleep on this Commanders team. You can't take them lightly. They can come out and surprise you, punch you in the face. Like I mentioned, at the end of the day, I do think the Lions get the job done. But I'm hoping that this game is closer and lives up to that Saturday night primetime game, and it's not that 9.5 point spread. Real quick before we move on to the next game, just because this was kind of a topic of discussion earlier, Pro Football Talk did just put out that the Commanders OC Cliff Kingsbury has decided to wait on any potential head coaching interviews until at least the playoffs are over. He wants to fully focus on the Lions this week. So, I guess now we know what the Eagles fans will be pointing at if the Lions or the Commanders pull off the upset and the Eagles get bounced by the Rams.
Oh, 100%, because the excuses always be flying. I guess we can move on to Sunday. A lot of interesting things to talk about on Sunday. Number one, the matchups are good, but both games being played in the Northeast with potential snow. We could have double-header snow games in the playoffs on Divisional Sunday. Starting off 3 o'clock, Rams at Eagles, over under 43.5. Rams are underdogs by 6.5. We don't really know what exactly the weather's going to look like for this one. We know it's going to be cold, and we're seeing ideas anywhere from up to 6 inches or as little as a dusting. So don't really know how to outlook this game without knowing, like, is it going to be a significant snow that could affect things, or is it just going to kind of be an ambiance kind of thing?
I think it's going to be an ambiance. I think the closer and closer we get, the less and less likely snow we're going to get. The high is in the 30s, so it might even start as a rain wintry mix. So I would not anticipate snow globe weather in Philadelphia.
When it comes to injuries, Eagles mostly just resting guys, but they did lose one of their middle linebackers, Nakobe Dean, for the season last week. Biggest injury news for the Rams was we were worried about Tyler Higbee. He's been limited in practice with his chest injury despite not returning last week, so it seems like he's going to be good to go. He started off super hot at the beginning of last week's game. He had 5 catches in the first quarter before he left.
No, yeah, he had a really good game. It was tough to see him go out, but that didn't mean the Rams missed a beat. So just adding a third option in the pass game could make a big difference. We know about Darius Slay. We know about Quinyon Mitchell on the outside. I know Cooper Kupp didn't have the biggest game But he's always good for a big catch on a third down. Puka Nacua has, you know, started to become a star, and it's also interesting too because Quinion and Darius are boundary guys, and Cooper DeJean, who has been, a bright star, has been susceptible giving up passes across the middle, and I think that's where they're going to attack him with these guys. And so I'm really interested to see how this game goes back and forth. I honestly think I would like the Rams and the points in this one, but think the Eagles prevail.
I've been leaning towards taking the Rams and the points as well. The only thing that I think that would stop me is if we do find out there's going to be more snow. And it's interesting. You're hearing forecasts that say that snow is becoming less likely, at least where I'm at, not that far from Philly. I'm hearing that snow's more likely as of today.
I'm
So
looking at the Philadelphia weather. So in Philly,
everyone's all over the place on this one.
yeah, and literally the last thing I saw was 1 to 3 inches, and in like 35 degrees. So,
But the big question on if the Rams are going to have a shot in this game to me is going to be how can they rebound on stopping the Eagles' run game? Can they make the Eagles have to pass the ball? Because they cannot have Saquon Barkley go for 300 scrimmage yards, 255 on the ground again, and expect to still be in this game.
yeah, and I think you've seen this Rams defense get a little bit healthier, get better. I'm sure you've seen the stats for the last 5 weeks. They've held opponents to under 10 points.
Yep.
So this is also a playoff game. McVay has the playoff experience. They have, they're a younger team on defense, and they also have the benefit of playing the Eagles once already. So like they've started to see things. They know how to attack them differently. So I would be cautious of anticipating another massive Saquon breakout game.
Yep.
Obviously, you think the weather would play into their factor, but I also think the weather will affect Jalen Hurts just as much in a negative way if they have to throw the ball, which hopefully they wouldn't have to. And I think the weather will affect Matt Stafford as well. So honestly, I hope it doesn't do anything because I think this would be a really great game in good conditions. But snow football changes everything, and that's why I'm giving the edge to the Eagles.
Yes, it does. I'm also giving the edge to the Eagles on the points. I would think
Personally,
about
though,
taking the Rams.
There's nothing more that I want to see than Rams Lions NFC Championship game and Matt Stafford sending home the Lions. That is
a storyline.
There is nothing more. Now that the Packers are eliminated, don't hear what I wanted a Packers Super Bowl most of all. Now that they're eliminated, there is nothing more that I want to see this NFL season than the Rams sending home the Lions to go to the Super Bowl. And unfortunately, that means going to the Philadelphia
Eagles. We'll see what happens, and we'll talk about that one next week if it does happen. One more game on the divisional slate, 6:30 on Sunday, Ravens at Bills. And I don't think snow is going to affect this one too much, though they're saying there's a potential for lake effect snow. But what is going to affect it is a 14-degree temperature with a feels like in the negatives. It is going to be cold.
It's going to be cold. And you'd think that would benefit Mr. Derrick Henry, the way he's been playing. But just look to, I believe that was his 2,000-yard season. It might have been the year before, but he was, up there in yards. He had to go to Green Bay on a Sunday Night Football game in the cold and the snow, and Green Bay didn't have a very good run defense. And it was like, oh, Derrick Henry's just going to run all over him. End up having one of his worst games of the season. So something to keep an eye on there. But in the cold weather, you think you have to rely on both these games. And I think James Cook has been an underrated part of this Buffalo Bills success and what they've been able to do with him. And obviously, when we're talking run games, this matchup, you have to include the quarterbacks.
Oh, yeah, because it seems like the Bills even like running with Josh Allen more than they do James Cook half the time. And Lamar's taken his game to the next level, not only passing, but rushing just by having Derrick Henry there to run those options with. So this is the game where I think you could see runs pretty much every single play, but it would still be interesting because there's going to be some interesting dynamic runs. There's going to be some pop plays, but it's going to be windy. It's going to be cold. They're still going to find a way to get the pass game to work. It's just there's been some interesting games in Buffalo when the weather looks like this.
Yeah, and it's also a big game for Buffalo. They've heard all the noise about how they can only win in the wild card round.
Oh, yeah.
They can't win in the divisional round. They lost at home last year to the Chiefs. Heck, they might have lost the last 2 years to the Chiefs at home, and the Bengals as well. Like they've, had their struggles once we get to this divisional round. The Ravens, they've lost in some big moments. So this should be an all in all good game. And the one thing I do want to remind people, MVP votes have already been casted. This game will have no effect. So you can't be like, well, if the Ravens win, Lamar's the MVP, Josh Allen wins or if the Bills win, Josh Allen's the MVP. They've already been casted. We'll already have to wait and see the Thursday before the Super Bowl on how those votes unfold. But yeah, what a way to cap off divisional weekend with these two teams facing off.
And I hope the weather's not too much of a factor in this one either, because it'd be interesting to see how these guys can go out there basically not having to fight too many of the elements to, ball out in this. But I just want to jump on something that Cody said earlier in the season. I've seen this going around social media where it's like the AFC has this weird dance going on where like the Bills kryptonite is the Ravens kryptonite is the Chiefs, and the Chiefs kryptonite is the Bills. There's something wrong with that because the Bills can't beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. Maybe
Yes.
this is the year that changes, but I mean, I get what people are saying. The Bills did beat the Chiefs this year. They're the only team that did it without backups in there for Kansas City, but I'm still not taking that too lightly.
So let me ask you this. If you're
Mhm.
Kansas City, assuming you beat the Texans, you can't overlook it. That's one thing they can't do is start looking at the championship game. They're the AFC is going last, and it's going to be you think it's going to be it has to be either the Bills or the Ravens, and you think it'd be against the Chiefs. So what a way to end off championship weekend. We'll talk about that next week. But if you're the Chiefs, what team do you want to play?
I think you want to play Buffalo. I think the Ravens defense has been better in the second half of the season. So you have a better chance to put up more points on Buffalo. And you played Buffalo more recently, so there's a little bit more familiarity rather than playing week 1. And I just think the Ravens have the better overall team.
Yeah.
So.
I agree. I think Buffalo is the answer. I know it is interesting because you already beat Baltimore once by a toe. You lost to Buffalo, so why would
Yep.
you take the team that you lost to? But I agree. I think they could be better taken advantage of by Kansas City. They're going to hear the noise all week. You can't beat them. I think that'd be their matchup. And I do want to give
This one's not in Buffalo either.
The
I mean, last one was in Buffalo.
The time that changed the overtime rules though was in Kansas City. So
Yep.
they've lost to them in both places. But I did talk about MVP and all that stuff. Just a little oddball fact. I know Tyler's not on here, but a little oddball fact I saw. Josh Allen is the first or second team all-pro quarterback to not have another all-pro on his team, where the Ravens led the league in the number of all-pros. So just something to think about too when you mention, you think the Ravens have an overall better team. It's not just you saying that. That's what the AP voters thought as well.
Man, we're just going back to our preseason awards prediction show where we said if Josh Allen makes the playoffs, he should be the MVP. And here we're sitting as Lamar's made a great case and had a fantastic season, but it still almost leans Josh Allen.
Yeah, I think Josh Allen's going to end up winning it. I did hear someone, not to get too far into this conversation, say last week, and this is not how it should go. But honestly, last year, a lot of people thought Josh Allen should have won it last year. But Lamar did. So if you look at it as a 2-year thing and they each won one, you feel pretty good about it. But in terms of the word valuable, it goes to Lamar. If it's best statistical, valuable Allen, statistical Lamar, and we'll just have to wait and see.
And I don't think I mentioned this, so it's probably worth mentioning. Zay Flowers still hasn't practiced this week. He's down with his knee injury. At this point, I think we're leaning him not going. Obviously, we said no Deontay Johnson to fill that in. He's not eligible to actually play. He was just added for bookkeeping reasons. But they're going to have to rely on the tight ends and Rashad Bateman again.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting. And we'll talk about who we're going to think we're going to do good when we do our DFS lineup here in a second. But I told you I had a question, and I
Uh-huh.
wanted to get through all the games. And I know I'm putting you on the spot, and I'll do it with you.
All
But
right.
there's only 8 teams left, so I think it's easy to rank.
Mhm.
1 being the team we want to win the Super Bowl the most, 8 being the team we want to see win the Super Bowl the least amount.
Okay.
So we'll get this out of the way. 1 for you was the Los Angeles Chargers. They're eliminated. So it's the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. I'm already struggling at number 1. I'm not gonna lie. Because there's it's between my next 3 are gonna be some order of these teams,
Mhm.
and it's the 3 teams in the AFC not named the Texans. I think it'd be cool to see the Chiefs three-peat. I know people are sick of it, but I've been talking about that. I think it'd be cool to see them. But I'm not gonna pick them at my 1.
Yeah.
I think
Because you're not a
Buffalo.
Chiefs fan. You heard enough jokes about that last postseason.
Well, I don't care. You can call me a Chiefs fan if you want. Buffalo, Bills, that story I think would be cool, never winning a Super Bowl. And I'm not a huge Ravens fan, but I've always loved Lamar.
Yep.
But at number 1, I am gonna go the Buffalo Bills.
Okay. So my number 1's the Eagles. Your number 1 is the Bills. My number 2 is going to be the Ravens. Number 1, grown a big fan of Lamar. Number 2, it's got to be in the household here. So
Will you have to go to your parents' house if it's a Ravens Eagles Super Bowl?
man, I don't know. We don't know. We haven't discussed any of that.
That'd be a long 2 weeks if that does break down. I don't know. I think you should just maybe get a second mortgage and go to the game.
Don't worry. That was in discussion as well. Of we have to just go, but it's not possible. But it's got to be away. So
maybe we'll. My second team, I will say the Kansas City Chiefs, and they're three-peat.
my number 3 would have to probably be the Bills because I was rooting for the Bills for how many years. I finally feel like I gave up on them this year, but they brought me right back in. So if it's not the Eagles, give me the winner of that Ravens Bills game, I guess.
Yeah, I understand that the Ravens would be 3 for me. So, and literally, if you want to switch any of those order for me, I know it's just for the second 2 for you. Eagles are clear number 1.
Mhm.
I think for me, there's a clear tier break after the top 3.
Yeah, I would probably agree. I don't think it's as big of a tier break though, because my number 4 would be the Detroit Lions because I'm a fan of the underdog. Obviously, they've kind of dropped down my list a little bit because I do not want the Eagles to have to face them, and there'll be a little bit of bitterness if that ends up being their ticket in. But I'd like to see the Lions get there first.
Yeah, number 4 for me would be the Los Angeles Rams. Which, if you've been a long-time listener of this story, I don't know if there's a bigger Matt Stafford fan than myself. At least in this podcast, there's definitely not.
No, there's definitely not on this show. But okay, so recapping my first 4, I had Eagles, Ravens, Bills, and Lions. Number 5, I would probably go Rams at that spot then. I'm also a fan of Stafford. And some of their other guys, it's hard to not root for Cooper Kupp. It's hard to see him, dealing with so many injuries lately. I'm a Kyron Williams guy as well. And Sean McVay is just a smart guy. So
Yeah. And my number 5 for me, I would slot in the Eagles here. Being in Pennsylvania, I've always said I'm not an Eagles fan by any stretch of the imagination, but I respect Philly for the most part. Sometimes their fans are a little out of the wild, but as a
100%.
sports town, I was at the draft in Philadelphia. I went to the Super Bowl parade in Philadelphia. So they've been a big part of sports history for me. So they would be in my top 5.
Number 6 for me, give me the upset of the century and have the Texans do it.
I will say the same thing, but I'm going to take the Commanders and Jaden Daniels.
The Commanders probably would have been higher for me, but there's a division rivalry thing kind of knocking it down for me.
Yeah. And then so it's 7 for me would be the Texans.
And 7 for me would be the Commanders. So there's the flip right there, but same idea. But then that last team left is the Chiefs because I am against the three-peat, unlike you. But I get it. As a sports fan, it's interesting to see. if that dynasty does break out. I'm just tired of hearing Patrick Mahomes in, important games.
Hey, just remember to enjoy the moment. It's not
Yes.
great. It's not fun,
Hey,
but enjoy
last
the
year I was very down on a San Francisco and Kansas City Super Bowl, but it was a good time because it was a good game.
Yeah. And for me, the Detroit Lions, number 8.
And
I
that's a
don't care
division rivalry thing a little bit there for you.
that, and just the way like this team, they have not been good. You know how like when bad teams get good, they appreciate where they've come from.
Yeah, I
And
don't
this
think the
isn't some
Commanders have been that way either.
uh and this is not so much the players, because I think some of them have been there forever. Guys like Frank Ragnow, like you know how much this means to them,
Mm-hmm.
the fans. And so yeah, it's definitely divisional.
Yeah.
It's like the fact that a Lions fan was like, try winning the division to us. It was like, sir, do, do you need a history lesson? I know you've won it 2
You
years in
guys
a
own
row.
them almost as
You
much
hung
as you
a
own the
banger.
Bears.
They hung a banner in their rafters for winning a division last year. They'll probably do it again this offseason for winning the
I
NFC North
mean, I don't
again.
know if you realize a lot of teams do that.
A lot of bad teams.
I
I
mean, I
mean,
know the Eagles were bad for a long time, but damn.
did you see the Vikings celebration after they beat the Packers? They were throwing Gatorade and Sam Darnold up on the shoulders. It's like they won the Super Bowl.
Well, I can see why they lost the rest of their games then.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. But it's unfortunate. Both of our teams, both of our number 8s probably end up playing in the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah, Lions Chiefs gonna 100% beat the Super Bowl. No, I only was talking about the Commanders because of how much trash talk was coming out of the Commanders locker room after beating the Eagles, without Jalen Hurts for 3/4 of the game. So that was my comparison to what you were saying with the Lions.
Yeah. But all right, you want to do this DFS lineup real quick before we hop out of here?
Let's have some fun. So I mean, we both got to pull it up on our phones here.
Yeah.
So this is a
So
good time. We're just gonna
quick,
we're gonna have to fill some gap here.
George, hum the intro.
Boom, 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 boom. All right, Cody. We are doing a DFS lineup including all 4 games. So why don't we start off? Just go down position by position like you usually do. Quarterback, go ahead, go first.
I took the MVP. You're like, which one is it? I was hoping you guess. Josh Allen, 7,700.
There's just enough doubt that I can't make that assumption.
I was
Especially because I was looking at my phone and I picked Patrick Mahomes, and for whatever reason, my mind went he picked Mahomes, and I'm like that we're past that Patrick Mahomes winning MVP like run, but my mind was like taking me back 2 years. I'm like, he took Mahomes too.
No, I took Josh Allen.
All right, I took Mahomes because the value of $6,000 in a good matchup just seemed way too nice.
I get that. I 100% do, but I took Josh Allen.
Okay, moving on to running back, I spent up on my first one, and I took Saquon.
Nice. That's good. He's what, 70, 800?
8,200.
8,200. Oh, geez.
Yeah.
All right. So my first running back is one Mr. Comeback Kid himself, David Montgomery, 5,700.
That's a pretty good value if he gets enough touches. Just
He's
seeing
getting
how
the
he's
touchdown.
performed. Yes, exactly. And then my RB2 was my spend down, and I took Justice Hill, hoping to get another touchdown like last week.
Yeah, I went similar value with my running back and took one Mr. Isaiah Pacheco. That dude always turns it on in the playoffs, hoping to do the same.
Wide receiver 1 is also a money saver here, and it's a stack with Mahomes. I went Hollywood Brown.
I like it. How much is he?
4,200. I think he could be a sneaky value with how much he was getting involved when they were still playing starters.
Okay, so ooh, I did not almost say that. But nope, I'm gonna stick. I was gonna pivot.
Okay.
I like that value, but my numbers are even. I'm gonna skip with my stack 5,000 Khalil Shakur.
Khalil Shakur is probably not even the most expensive Bills receiver, but he's been the best performing Bills receiver. So there's value.
Yeah, that was my value pick, and he's my stack with my quarterback.
I like it. My wide receiver 2 is my most expensive at 6,300, Terry McLaurin.
My next wide receiver is 5,400, one Mr. Cooper Kupp. Had a down game last week. Look for a bounce back this week.
I like it. And then my wide receiver 3, because I didn't really like what I saw to A.J. Brown last week, and he was more involved. I went 5,600 Devontae Smith.
Same. Got the
All
same
right.
guy. Same spot.
How about that? And then at tight end, I went with Zach Ertz. I'm expecting Washington to throw and put up a lot of points, so doing 2 pass catchers on there seemed to make sense.
I went 3,500 Isaiah Likely, expecting Zay Flowers not to play.
Isaiah Likely did have a decent game. I mean, he wasn't the most involved, but with the tight ends there, it's kind of like you're either going to get 2 or you're going to get 20. Flex, I had a little extra money to spend here. I went Amon-Ra St. Brown.
My flex, I had some money to spend as well, and I went one Mr. King Henry.
And he was 8,000.
Yeah. So we both paid up for a running back.
7,200 for we paid up. We both paid up for a running back, just different spots.
Yeah. Because I was like, oh, I still have a lot of money left in my flex. And I was like, I'm taking Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. I was debating going him instead of Saquon, but the homer in me was screaming too much apparently. And then I went and paid up for the highest defense because it was still only 3,600 and went Chiefs against Houston.
Same. I was like, I'm not taking anyone else.
I do not have much faith in taking any Texans in a DFS lineup this week. I guess if there had to be anybody, it's Nico Collins. But because of that, like the matchup just seems way too good to go with the Chiefs defense.
Yeah. The only reason I would consider not is if depending on how many people are in the league that you're playing in, and because the values are so low, I imagine the Chiefs will be picked a lot. So if you want to, go bold and take the Eagles against the Rams, you don't think they're going to have a good game, or you saw that Matt Stafford's not great in the snow, like that could be your upper edge. But George and I went with the Chiefs.
I like it. I had $100 to spare, so we'll see if I decide to change anything up, but I'm more than likely just locking that in.
It's also good when you do your lineup once and you look down and it says 0 and you just nailed the budget. So
yeah,
I'm at 0 and that's where it's going to stay. And I know we do a terrible job at recapping these. And if you ever want to join, you could probably search on free on the site that I won't give a shout out for because they're not a sponsor, but they could be. There are 200 player free leagues, but George and I's last time we did this, we finished within 2 points of each other.
We did. Had a close one there. And if I'll try to remember to drop a link into our social media pages so you guys have a join. You have to join quick because it is a public league. You gotta kind of just get some people on DraftKings searching for leagues that join in. But if you join in and you end up beating us, let us know on our Monday show and we'll give you a little shout out.
For sure. And you can drop those comments live. But George, any last thoughts for this divisional, not super weekend?
I almost want to say exactly what we said going into the Eagles-Packers game last week, but it seemed to not work. So I'm going to say absolutely nothing and just smile at the camera.
Oh, man, doesn't even give me time to look for my buttons, George. I wanted you to talk a little bit more. You couldn't hit me with a go flying
birds.
Animal. Thank you. I couldn't
go flying animal.
That's what I'm going to say. I have some family members that are Eagles fans. When I'm cheering, it's going to be go flying animal. I don't know how to spell anyways, but and that's the truth. I can at least spell that one, I think, sometimes. But that'll wrap up another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. Thanks for out. Through the Super Bowl, we'll be back on last Monday, and we'll catch you up the off-season schedule. But we're not going anywhere. We'll be up around all season long, talking football, getting you ready, and hopefully winning you some money on these DFS lineups. I'm Cody Roadcap. That is George Kirk. We will talk to you next week after another great weekend of NFL football.